Hi, so today I'm going to be going over my writing bullet journal. These are basically just all the notes that I've taken throughout my creative writing minor career in college. And so I'm going to cover as much material as I can in 10 minutes, and the rest of it I'm going to make a series. So I got this journal because I was going to be writing a short story cycle, which is basically a series of short stories that are not dependent upon each other, but they work together to make more sense than they would independently. And mine was called Earthberries. This is my table of contents. I'll be going over some of this today. Oh yeah, and this one is like term 1917. I don't know, but I really like these because their pages come pre-numbered and there's a built-in table of contents. So anyway, I first started out with the 16 Myers-Briggs types. I listed out the 4 main types and then their subtypes. I wanted to get a quick snapshot of each personality type and decide what characteristics I wanted my characters to have. And so then I listed my main character's type. I went to the Myers-Briggs website and gave her a personality test. I just kind of channeled her and then took the test. And so I wrote down all her information that was relevant. I wrote down other main characters' information. I wrote down the 3-act story structure, but then forgot to write down Act 3. And then I did a little, oops, I should probably keep it this way. I did a little story structure thing in more of a graph sort of layout. I did an inspiration page. I would highly recommend doing this and putting it in your creative writing or whatever you have journal, even if you're not a writer, because you can always just flip back to this page if you're feeling discouraged or like you have no motivation, and come back to some of the quotes that light a fire underneath you. So then I have the story structure notes. It explains kind of in detail how much of the story this portion should take up. Divides them into their acts and gives a short little description of everything. Character development notes. I included everything that I found that I might need for character development. I think there may be another page in here on character development. Then I have the Snowflake Method. I'm going to go over this. Well, I guess I could just sort of show you, and if you want to pause it, you can. I haven't actually used this method. I had planned to. I did use some of the steps, but I never used it fully. And so, dialogue. I am terrible at writing dialogue, the worst. It sounds like my 7-year-old sister wrote it every time I try to write dialogue. So I wrote down a lot of tips. I highlighted the ones that or things that I needed to work on personally, why it's important, tips that I found from the internet, internal monologues. I use my character's inner voice a lot. And vocabulary for the story I wrote, it had a lot to do with my culture, which is the Muskogee culture. I got a lot of inspiration from my culture to write my story. I have a description of my 3-act story structure. So the short story cycle was called Earthberries. So within it, there were 3 stories. Heat rises, wind carries, and leaves fall. Then I have these 6 elements of fiction. "20 literary elements." And these are just fancy terms that sound kind of pretentious, but they're useful if you're talking about literature in academia, like I am. Then I have the Jungian Archetypes. Archetypes? Archetypes? I don't know. Anyway, so there are 4 basic sort of categories. Carl Jung, his types are actually what led to the, I guess, modern version of the Enneagram today, which I'm a huge proponent of. And so I did this to help get to know my characters a bit more on a deeper personal level. I never actually sorted my characters into these. I just kind of took pieces from each one and sort of compiled them together into different people. I decided to list the Gregg shorthand alphabet and the Morse code alphabet simply because I wanted to learn it. Creating character flaws. This is something I struggle with because I struggle to sort of come up with unique character flaws that aren't stereotypical. And so we've got features and their corresponding fears over here. 10 Commandments of Writing Fiction. This is one of my favorite pages in the whole book. Please pause and read it. 6 types of story conflict. Sure, that's not all that exist, but it's what I wrote. Create more conflict. We really love conflict. These are really good tips, actually. Character flaws, more about them. Then we have character, not necessarily character development, because they're not necessarily developing, they're just changing. So how characters change. More conflict. 10 tips on writing manipulative villains. Always useful. So in next week's video, I'll be covering notes regarding fiction writing workshops and more inspiration, kind of metaphysical and obscure. So I'll see you next time.